Now, are you guys prepared to play the third game of the day?
People unhappy.
Yes, I know you like making people suffer.
Yeah, I basically play an Exodia deck.
Yeah, you do. Do you want to show people your Exodia deck? Should we just delete this entire area and get your deck?
If I can use my Megaman deck?
Yeah, if I've still got it saved.
No, I didn't say we were going to play the deck. I said just show people the deck.
Right.
If you've not got it saved, I have, I'm sure.
Wait a minute. Pretty sure I've got it saved. Yeah, I've got it saved, yeah.
Okay, so you will see this has different card backs.
I think it's gone on placed it.
We've got 3 of them now.
Yeah, let's just delete this
one.
Yeah,
there we go.
It's still loading for me.
Still loading. I see it now. Right, so this character...
It's degeneracy.
Is named Heidi. Her thing is that she can attach cards with Krager in the name to her as though they share the same name. So normally when you have a character, you can play additional copies of characters with the same name but maybe different numbers of dots at the top or other different ways of indicating that they're a different card but they're the same character. And when you stack them, the first one stays your character, but you also gain any of those extra symbols on the side and any extra abilities that are printed on the other characters. Her thing is that all these Kragers, these giant robots, also count as her in terms of she can play them. Can you bring out a bunch more Kragers? Show us all the different ones?
Hey, if I've got them... I believe I've got them all... Let me just
use the search function. Search for Krager.
That's what I'm doing.
Oh my god, on UFS Ultra you can't sort by hand size of vitality?
Yes, you can. Just hit the plus button.
Oh, there's a plus button.
Yeah, there's a little plus button that gives you more options.
Yeah, and that's all of them.
Well, it still doesn't have a keyword count, though.
No, there isn't a keyword count, but most people don't need that. That's just Mega Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all 5.
So if I go back to that for a second, UFSUltra.com is the main and basically the only card search for this game. And it is an excellent resource, on par at least with things like Gatherer for Magic the Gathering. Some of the really great card searches out there. But currently, because it is run as almost a hobby, it's just a passion project really from a guy who does databases for a living, and he happens to be involved in doing databases for the French government. He's a bit busy with other things right now, and so some of the newest cards aren't actually on there.
Which is
still, if you're getting into the game, it's got all the current sets, just not some of the promos, not some of the small add-on packs that have been being released as deck loadable content.
Ha ha ha, puns, clap, 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 clap.
So yeah, it's definitely worth looking at if you want to see more of the cards. It's just not quite perfect right now. If you could stop messing with that, that would help. So we've got a whole bunch of different Kragers. 5 different colours of them, and yeah, the black one specifies if Krager has 5... So if Heidi has 5 different characters with Krager in their name attached to her, you form der Krager des Toads and win the game.
Krager des Todes.
Yeah, Todes. That's really
sorry,
strange.
My German isn't perfect.
Why does it mention a character that's not even in the game? That's weird.
It's supposed to be for flavour reasons. Krager der Nacht specifies you win the game if you have all 5 Kragers, basically. It also gives your attack plus or minus 1 damage.
Any attack.
We'll talk... Okay, yeah, sorry, any attack plus or minus 1 damage. But we'll talk about why that's not relevant in just a second.
That's the card that...
The other Kragers all have, if this card is discarded due to your character's effect, abilities on them. Each one does a slightly different beneficial thing, and they're all discarded by Heidi's effect, which is, after she takes damage, you are forced to discard a Krager from your character.
If you want a huge challenge in this card game, use Krieger der Nacht as your starting character.
Yeah, so the way these are written, they have 1 hand size and 1 vitality. So that is a really, really bad move. But you can technically do it.
I mean, if your opponent only draws 1 attack a turn, you can technically not die.
Yeah, but that's only if you don't play a thing.
Yes, exactly.
This one, then, if you can check a 5 difficulty to do it, it can make your opponent's block modifier block on attack gets +1 for each Krieger attached to your character. So,
which is mostly irrelevant because this deck doesn't use attacks.
Yeah, it makes your attacks a lot harder to block, basically. The block modifier is the proper name for that number in the shield up top. Then this one gives you vitality back when it's discarded, which is nice. And also gives your opponent -1 vitality and you +1 vitality whenever your tech or weapon attack deals damage.
Which is irrelevant in this
Which
deck.
is again irrelevant because you don't play attacks, but we'll talk about why you don't play attacks in a second.
Sometimes you unlike maybe 2 or so attacks depending on matchup.
Yeah, there are some attacks that work quite nicely with Heidi, but at the same time,
a lot of the time it's not worth it.
The thing about attacks is that they all have 3 checks or below.
Yeah, and you really need high checks and Heidi.
Your foundations are almost all 4 or above, and your characters are almost all 6 or above. You'll notice all these characters have a 6 difficulty, and because you want to play down all of them in one turn if you can, to stop your opponent dealing you damage, making you discard them, interfering with your assembling them all, you're going to be, by the end of your turn, playing against maybe a 9 or a 10 difficulty. So you want the best checks you can possibly get.
Like the lowest I run is, lowest I have is a 4, but those are...
But your 4s specifically search up characters, don't they?
Or this.
Or there's dodge, which says you lose vitality instead of taking damage, so you don't lose Krieger.
Yeah. And also you can use it on really high speed attacks to make people upset.
Oh, this one makes your tech attacks less difficult. Big whoop. What tech attacks are you playing? This one's the useful one. Attacks. Before you would take damage from a blocked attack, if you would take 3 or less damage. So this is useful against if you partially block a thing, or if your opponent has the throw keyword, which makes it act as though you'd partially blocked it. Then you reduce the damage they attach to 0, and you don't take the damage, and you don't lose the Krieger. But yeah, those are the 5 Kriegers. You run 4 copies of each, obviously. Now, can you fetch the foundations out of the deck?
I believe that might be all of the different...
Right, and you run 4 copies of all of these?
I believe so.
Okay, we have Immortality, which has E-commit, discard 2 cards, add 1 character from your discard pile to your hand or card pool. So yeah, lets you discard 2 cards, which is a heavy expense, to pick up a character though. So pick up any Krieger you're missing as long as it's in your discard pile. And as you've seen, every time you check, that puts a card into your discard pile. So half the cards you see will be in your discard pile. So the ability to fetch those cards that you've seen is really useful.
Yes, it is.
That's one reason to do it. The other reason is that all of these characters, and basically every character in the game, has a +0 mid-block, which is a really useful block. So if you're just holding 2 none-blocks, like say 2 High Seas Adventure, you just go, nope, I'm changing those in.
And there's also the second
I'm getting a +0 mid. Yeah, then there's also a second E, which is E flip, so during the attack. If you block this attack with a character card, it deals no damage. Playable while committed. So you can find the character, and then you can flip this to say, even if you partial with that character, it deals no damage. Even if the attack's a throw, it deals no damage. It's a real good way to stop you taking damage and to find characters out your discard pile.
It's also another way to make people hate you.
Yeah, it kind of is. So Boundless... No, that's not the next one we want to talk about. Herald of Germania, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I thought so.
So response your turn flip. After you play a character card that you could normally attach to your character, add it to your staging area. So that just means the character doesn't clog up your card pool to make your next things more difficult, really. That's the main use of that. But at the same time, if your opponent happens to attack you during your turn somehow, which, since you're not playing attacks, is going to be very unlikely, but if it does happen, you can use this to put a character that you've blocked with down as well. And then the F, remove one of your opponent's assets. If your opponent's playing assets and they're somehow a threat to you, that could be quite useful, but that's just a secondary bonus. The real thing we play this for is making your win turn a bit easier, because basically you use that R on the first character you play, and then every character you play for the rest of the turn is 1 difficulty less, because it's not got that character before it in the card pool.
I'll use the Heidi first.
Okay, yeah. You use your Heidi F for your first one. You straight up add a Krieger to your to your staging area. Then you do that for the second one. So you've only actually got to play and keep 3 there. Then we've got this one, Mechanical Genius, which is F destroy. So F is as a form, which is any time you could play a card during your turn the normal way, basically. You can do this form action instead. And it is form destroy. Your next non-attack card gets -3 difficulty. So most non-attack cards are quite low difficulty. They're foundations or assets. They tend to be a 3 at most. But characters are different.
Exception of.
Characters are 6 difficulty usually. This turns them into a 3 difficulty. Makes them so much easier to play. It also has Deadlock E-Commit. Your tech attack gets +3 damage and throw, which is great if you run tech attacks, and if your opponent happens to go into Deadlock. But given that we run no attacks at all, and Deadlock is a really rare occurrence, that is just a useless ability. It really is just that makes your characters half as difficult. It's useful. Then we're going to look at Section 13's Failed Experiment.
This is a really good one.
This is E-remove, discard 1 card, add 1 character card from remove from game pile to your hand. So basically, remove this card from the game, and change any card in your hand into a character that you need. You can only do this during an attack, and only during an attack without flash. So you have to hope that your opponent isn't playing a character that's entirely flash attacks, but there are very few of those. The only real notable one is Lord Raptor, but we'll have to talk about him some other day. Basically, the drawback is you can only do it during your opponent's attacks, you don't play attacks. But you can fix your hand to have whatever character you're missing when your opponent attacks you if you need to, which is really useful. Then it's also got E-Destroy, add 1 character card from your discard pile to your hand. So the difference there is that this doesn't remove from the game, so it can get shuffled back into your deck by various things. And also, you're not losing a card from your hand to get that character, so you're getting a net gain of cards in hand. Again, you do have to do it during your opponent's attack, but I mean, that's not great.
Yeah. A lot of the time, it's basically just weighing up risk and reward with this deck.
Then we've got German Temper.
To take.
German Temper is remove, discard 1 character card, which would be a huge drawback if we couldn't get them back so easily with our other cards that we've seen already. After your opponent plays a card as a form, which is basically just after your opponent plays a card normally during their turn, you discard it from their card. So your opponent plays a massive attack they're going to kill you with, you just say no.
Yeah. Delete.
Then we have Blueprints,
which is
E-Commit,
really
add
good.
1 character card from your discard pile to the top of your deck. So if you're not planning on blocking your opponent's attack, so you know you're not going to make a check this turn, you just commit this during their attack, you put your character on top, and you wait till your turn to draw it. Also has F-Flip, so during your turn when you could play a card normally, search your deck for 1 character card, reveal it and add it to your hand. So that finds the character that you're missing, and we're not playing that in the real version of this deck. We're only playing that in the online version, because this card is something like 20 quid, because it is so useful in so many decks that care about what characters they have.
Because of the 7th Cross.
Yeah, I mean, 7th Cross definitely doesn't help it, but even before then, there were characters that cared about stacking multiple copies.
Yeah.
If anything, the addition of Gauge as a mechanic on attacks made it easier to get multiple copies of characters without Blueprints, and therefore made Blueprints worse.
And yet it got more expensive because there's just so many more cards to use.
But yeah, Blueprints is a ridiculous card. You will not find it in stock most places that sell this card game even, because even at 20 quid it sells. Then we got Evil Eye. Everything on this card is playable while committed, which is really nice and useful. It means you can commit this to pass checks without any worries whatsoever. And it also has E-Flip, return this attack to its printed speed. So if your opponent makes their attack really fast, you just say no.
That's basically this deck, just no.
And has E-remove 1 character card from your hand or card pool, draw a card.
That's not used as often, but it's
why
there
that's
if you need
useful
it.
is, first of all, Section 13's Failed Experiment can fetch it back. Second of all, if you have 4 different Kraegers and multiples of one of them, you can use it to try and find the 5th. And third, most importantly, is if you block with a character, you can then remove the block from your card pool so that it's not clogging up and making your next block more difficult. And you get to replace it in your hand, have another card to block with.
It needs some setup, but it's pretty damn good when it goes
I mean, if you start blocking with characters, this is incredible.
Yeah. But
yes, you do remove all those characters from the game, but every copy of Section 13's Failed Experiment can get one of them back, and also
you run 4 copies of each.
You run 4 copies of every character. So it's not like you're going to run out of any one character that fast. Then we have Iron Grit. E-Commit, your tech attack cannot be blocked by action cards, completely irrelevant. Then we have R-Remove. After you check a 6, add the checked card to your hand. Playable while committed. So there are a few cards in here that are 6s. Let's see if we can find any.
Well, all the characters for starters.
I thought the foundations were, but yeah, all the characters are 6s, which means there are at least 20 6s in the deck. At any time you check any of those 6s, you can add it to your hand with this. So basically just, if you check the character you need, oh look, it goes to your hand instead.
Which always feels very nice.
Yes. Then we've got Boundless. E-Commit, your tech or weapon attack gets +2 damage, which is irrelevant. Fire R commit, so you can only do this if you're a fire character, but Heidi is. After your opponent adds any number of cards to their hand due to their effect, draw 1 card. Okay, so this is purely reactionary, but a lot of decks will have card draw, and that counts as adding cards to hand, and there are other ways to add cards to your hand as well.
Oh, I remember, I think I've got a side deck.
Okay, well, we'll not deal with the sideboard right now. That seems quite weak in this deck, to be honest.
It's not that great, but drawing from our stuff's not bad.
It's decent, at least.
Yeah.
But I will say, if they're doing it during their turn, then you're drawing during their turn. That's just going to reduce the number of cards you draw during your turn when you draw back up to your hand size. So
depends on how
much you're
blocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when it's really useful. Yeah, we looked at Iron Grit already. So the final one is High Seas Adventure. High Seas Adventure is R remove after attack is played, it gains flash. So this basically says, after your opponent plays that cool attack that's got a huge ability that's going to win them a game, you just say no.
No, yeah.
It has flash now. They skip their enhanced step. Nobody can play enhanced abilities during that attack.
So they just send it. You basically use it as German Templar without having to burn character cards.
Yeah, I mean, you do still have to block. So you do kind of burn a character card in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah, but you don't
but it doesn't have to be a character card block. There are other blocks in the deck.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen Iron Grit has a block. Mechanical Genius has a block. Section 13's Failed Experiment has a block. Evil Eye has a block.
Yeah.
Herald of Germania has a block.
Yeah.
Immortality has a block. And all of those blocks are 2 or above, but also you're going to be checking a 4 minimum, quite likely a 6. So it's not that big of a deal that you're needing to pass a high check.
Yeah, basically just having more copies of German Templar.
Kind of, yeah. So, do you want to bring out other card types?
Okay.
Is it just actions left? And if so, what actions do you have?
I don't have any assets, but I've got Dodge, Let's Cut Loose, and Templar, and Revoke.
So, Revoke is a very well-known, very well-loved card. Would be very expensive if it wasn't reprinted as a promo so many times, I suspect. But this is
another card that is
0 difficulty and it's an action. So as an action, you just play the card to play its ability. So its R can be played when its R can be played after your opponent plays an enhanced ability. Its first F can be played as your first F of the turn. So before you play your first card as your action, you can play this instead.
Which you rarely do.
I'll talk about the first F first, because the first F is your foundations get -1 difficulty for the rest of this combat phase. So basically it acts as though this card isn't in your card pool. And then during your end phase, you add this card to your staging area face down. So basically it's just an extra foundation if you don't draw enough foundations. But when is that going to happen in this deck that's mostly foundations and characters? I mean, worst comes to the worst. What have you done? You've got a handful of all the characters you need? Great. Just play them slowly and hope your opponent doesn't deal you too much damage in the process.
Just keep blocking.
Or that, yeah. And then anyway, the R, which is the bit that matters most.
Yeah.
After your opponent plays an enhanced ability, cancel its effects and remove this card from the game. So it leaves your card pool, doesn't clog it up, and just says no to whatever your opponent's doing.
Which is always very fun to do.
You're essentially paying a card in hand to do that, but even so, if your opponent has a big effect that's going to cause you problems, you just say no. Then we've looked at dodge a bit. This is, you lose X vitality. Before the damage step of your opponent's attack, it deals no damage, and you add one of your opponent's foundations to their hand, where X is half the attack's damage. So, great for not technically taking damage, but still losing vitality, because that means that it doesn't then remove any Kraigers you've attached to your character, because you've not technically taken damage, so the static doesn't trigger. But not so good for, if you fail to play this, you still lose that vitality, because you've still paid the cost to pay, even if you failed the actual play. So there are ups and downs to dodge. I would say it's not one of the best cards in the deck, but it's a decent card.
It's a good for certain matchup.
Let's Cut Loose, on the other hand, is crazy.
Yes.
Let's Cut Loose it's a 6 check, so you can add this to your hand with Iron Grit, if you need to. Normally you'd want a character instead, but it is a thing you can do. And this is E-Remove, so as an enhance during your opponent's attack, you remove this from the game, and you add 1 foundation from your discard pile to your hand, or from your card pool to your staging area. Then you draw a card. So, I mean, either you clear one of your blocks out of your card pool and you put it down into your staging area so you can use it as a foundation. Oh yeah, you search through your discard pile, you find any foundation you need, either to block or to play during your turn, and you just have that in your hand.
Most likely something that fishes for characters.
And then, if you didn't get a good block that way, you draw another card as well, which can hopefully be a good block. And on top of that, this card leaves your card pool, so it's not clogging it up for your next block. So yeah, Let's Cut Loose is an excellent card. I don't know the price on that, but I reckon I think it's not that high, but it's definitely multiple pounds. It's a good card. So yeah, a budget version of this deck is probably worth looking into, but at the same time, I mean, Let's Cut Loose is a rare, it's not an ultra rare. You will see a fair few of them if you open packs from the Soul Calibur 6.
Yeah.
The first Soul Calibur 6 set, not Libra of Souls, right? Then you got Templar. So it has a response after you block with this card, draw 2 cards, gain 2 vitality. Basically, you just get 2 free cards and 2 free vitality when you block with that. And it's a +1 mid-block, so it's one of the better blocks in the deck. Slightly worse than the characters, but better than just about everything else. Or, if you feel like actually playing the card properly, it's commit 1 foundation, after your punch attack deals damage, discard it and this card from the card pool. So yeah, you're not playing punch attacks, you're not playing any attacks.
No.
So that's not relevant.
Just using it for the block.
You're just using it because it's a really good block that draws you more cards and gains you vitality.
Yes, gives you more ways, gives you more blocks.
And given that you're a 721, you have more hand size and less vitality than most players. So you need that blocks. Extra vitality is going to help keep you in the game. Yes, it does. You play 4 copies of Templar, and you're basically back at this. Well, you're at 29 health, which is slightly more than what we saw in the demo decks. But that extra card means that all these characters you're holding in hand don't clog up your hand quite as much. You still have stuff you can play. So she really does need to be a 7-hander.
Yeah. Otherwise you just die.
If she were an 8-hander, she'd be degenerate. But then again, apparently every 8-hander is degenerate. People play 8-handers with no effects, just because it's that good, apparently. I don't fully understand it, but, I mean, we'll talk about an 8-hander at a later date. I've already mentioned that we'll mention Taisei, and Taisei is an insane 8-hander. So, is that everything in the deck? Or is there anything else that we need to be aware of?
I believe that's everything. I think the rest is just...
But yeah, actions. You play the ability, you make the control check, and it stays in your card pool until it leaves end of turn, or until an effect takes it out of there. A lot of actions will even remove as cost, so they'll never actually even go into your card pool, which is a bit weird.
So yeah, that's the deck.
Yep, that's the deck. And... I mean, it's not really a tournament-winning deck, but
fun.
If it gets lucky, it can beat just about anything.
It's a solitaire deck, basically.
Yeah, you can consistently get all 5 characters turn 3, and if you're lucky, turn 2 is quite possible.
There's a Magic deck that's even more of a solitaire deck. You basically stop your opponent from playing anything and just execute the Turing machine on the playing field.
Yes, we know about your Turing machine deck.
It's not mine.
No, I know it's not yours, but you're the one who talks about it because...
what's that combo? I think it's Solemnity and... I can't remember what the other card is. It's basically when the spell's played, you put a counter on it and negate that spell. When it reaches a certain number of counters, you remove it. But then you've got Solemnity, so cards can't gain counters. So when that combo's out, it is impossible to play any cards.
Okay.
Which is fun, because everything just immediately gets countered. Then again, there's some cards that can't be countered, like the Chandra from M20, I think it was.
There's also a lot of green creatures that
Thought Distortion. But yeah,
Anyway. Can we move on from the Magic for now?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
I'm just going to delete all this, because we've shown off the deck. But yeah, that is how a Heidi deck plays, and that was sort of part my Heidi deck design, part Linosek's own tweets, and part ideas we got from TCG University back when my buddy Tamron Cardwell was with them. So do go check out Tamron Cardwell again. I've mentioned him in the past and played Smash Bros with him on stream. I appreciate his content a lot. I know I kind of pedantically picked apart what he was saying a bit last time, but that's how I interact with other streamers. I sort of jokingly nitpick and stuff. I don't know, I like teasing other streamers a little bit. It's just how I do things, how I show my friendship with them.
How do you show friendship? I don't.
But yeah, if I didn't like him, I wouldn't follow him.
Yeah.
Tam's definitely worth watching, and since I'm ending stream, I would go raid him now that I've figured out how raiding works, but sadly, he's not currently active. Nor is the other person I had in mind. So, do you guys want to see some art?
Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot there's also this button.
Okay, let's all go see one of my favourite art streamers then.